Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here. Just wanted to finally release my video with my thoughts on Final Fantasy 15. TLDR, it's one of my favorite Final Fantasies that I've played across the main numbered series, though I can't ignore some glaring issues with certain decisions, whether they be made based on what they thought was acceptable versus what they had the time to complete given their budget and the time frame they were given to complete the game. That being said, this is going to be a lot less formal of a review than it sounds now. I'm basically going to be rattling off my thoughts based on some things that I've written down here on the side, with some gameplay playing over the screen. Now also keep in mind, everything I'm going to say here, they haven't patched it yet, they haven't patched Chapter 13, they haven't added in the new story cutscene, so this is happening before any of the free or paid DLC happens. So if that stuff comes out after this review, I'll review those pieces of content individually. Just keep in mind that they are not part of this review at all. So let's get started with said review. I actually want to start with the things I didn't like about the game, since I'm sure the 9 out of 10 that I started this video with is definitely going to shock people. So I got a list of things I didn't like. I'm going to rattle through those real quick, just in the tone that you hear me now. So first thing I didn't like, and this was probably the thing that annoyed me the most, was the interact button also being the jump button. It's just something that you experience over and over and over again, and it never gets any better at any point in the game. If anything, the longer you play the game, the more frustrated you get that it's not working, and it works even worse. So that was definitely something. They could have put the interact button on another jump button, or give me the option to change which button is the interact button specifically. Another thing is the camera. Now, in most cases, I'm actually okay with the camera. It's only against large enemies where it almost goes under Noctis into the ground. That was definitely the most frustrating thing, especially against enemies like Iron Giants or the Nagas. I ran into that issue a lot, so I would like to see that adjusted in one of those patches coming up. Next on my list is the outfit system. I don't even know why they bothered. It was cool when they first showed it. It's like, oh, you know, a lot of people don't like that Noctis wears all black, so here's this outfit system where there's different outfits he can wear, so he can look different, so it's, you know, it's more pleasing to the player. But there were almost no outfits in the game, so it felt like something that was almost placed there so that they could add in like DLC outfits, free or paid otherwise. And I'm not a big fan of that. So if they can give us more free outfits, that's cool. But for my first playthrough, it was just kind of lame. I just stuck with the original outfit for pretty much the entire game, and then eventually switched to another outfit I got late game. So it was very underwhelming. Didn't feel like it belonged in the game at all. Now, my next one on the list, listen, I like to take breaks whenever I'm playing RPGs, and a load screen is usually a great time to do that, but it was a little bit too frequent. And I totally understand from a tech perspective why the load screens are as frequent and as long as they are. I totally understand it, and I respect that it's something that's almost like a necessary evil with the way the game was designed, but that doesn't make them any more attractive to me as a gamer. So the long load screen is definitely a negative on my list. Moving more into gameplay, unlimited use of items kind of bothered me. I would have liked items to either have some sort of cooldown so you can't spam them infinitely, or the limit to how many of each item you could use in a single fight, because other than one dungeon, you could pretty much beat everything in the game as long as you brought enough items to the fight. And yes, you could say, oh, well, then just don't use items. When a game sets up a system and your mind is like, I don't want a game over, you're just gonna do that. Like, if it's available to you, not using it is not as simple as, well, then just don't use it. I would like to see, maybe in the New Game Plus mode they're adding something along the lines of a limit to the number of items you can use in combat, some sort of counter that I can place on my game file, so that way it's like, okay, that was my third one, I gotta play smarter now, or something like that. But the unlimited use definitely took away any of the difficulty that I felt was very present during some of the endgame encounters. As soon as I could use items, though, that difficulty was wiped away. My next point on this list is all of Chapter 13. Now, I shouldn't say all of Chapter 13, because I'm actually of the mind that Chapter 13 wasn't as bad as people say. What I will say is that it dragged on too long. I love that the gameplay matches the tone, it matches the emotion and the atmosphere, and I totally respect that, and I think it was a good idea. I think it dragged on for too long, though, so I'm really interested to see how they're going to adjust the Chapter 13 gameplay, other than just buffing one of, you know, the attacks that you can use in that chapter in the first place. Moving on to Chapter 14, you pretty much can't explore any of the world in Chapter 14. I won't name what the world is called, for those of you listening who may not know what goes on there, but you can't really explore it all in Chapter 14, and that upsets me, though I think I know the reason why you can't. I still wish I could. So this is something that may actually get fixed sometime late next year. We'll see what happens with that, but it's still, the inability to explore Chapter 14 is upsetting to me. And finally, this is the last major point. I guess this isn't the last major point, but probably one of the most major points is the story of the characters other than the main four. So The story is clearly trying to be told from mostly Noctis's perspective. You have one scene that Noctis should have no idea about early in the game, and the rest of them are kind of told through the journal when he sees flashbacks, which we're kind of given the idea that the dog is capable of showing him these things, but you could still argue that even those aren't seen from Noctis's perspective, except for the ones where he's remembering things that he once saw based on what's in the book itself. But that being said, that made Noctis's story feel complete. And even Ignis, Gladio, and Prompto, other than clear scenes which I feel like are dead giveaways for what time frames their DLCs are going to take part in, even they have, good backstories and good camaraderie with Noctis. The problem is all the other characters in between. That includes Luna, Ravis, everyone from the Empire, There's a lot of characters that are introduced, but you're never given any ideas to their histories or their motivations. And there are some details that are just flat out left out, including Prompto's father and who the actual main villain of the game is, although you have some idea of it based on the context clues of Chapter 0. So there's a lot that feels missing, and it's probably because they were given a time frame, they accomplished everything they believed they could accomplish in that time frame, and then, as Tabata said way before the game launched, they plan to support fixing those things after the game had actually launched. It seems like they knew some of these things were incomplete when they launched the game, but Square Enix gave them a deadline, they got what they could get done, and now they're going to continue to enhance the experience for those who want to play the game again or believe that a fuller experience should be there. I just wish that Square Enix could have given them all the time they needed to release a full product instead of them needing to patch it in later. Though I am thankful that they're patching in new fully voice-acted cutscenes in all the languages later. It's just I wish it was there now. And that's just how it is. This last one is really more of a personal note. Super bosses in this game. I love Final Fantasy super bosses. These ones felt lackluster. The Adamantoise is basically auto-attacking or warp striking over and over and over again for a long period of time. Max Angelus is the same thing. If you don't know how to beat him, it's like the longest fight imaginable. Even if you do know how to beat him, it's pretty much abusing certain key glitches in the game to just warp strike him over and over again and take reduced damage, and just eventually you'll kill him. You know what I mean? And then you even have what's his name, Naglfar, who's just a reskin of an enemy type that you've already been introduced. He doesn't even have a unique character model. So I think they could have done a much better job with the super bosses of the game, ones that are in the secret dungeons, ones that are part of the legendary quest line. Just none of them felt unique. None of them felt good to fight. They paled in comparison to even some of the main story bosses in terms of fun factor. So hoping DLC super boss is really impressed, because they said they want to release a lot of free, even limited time availability super bosses for us to fight. Let's see what they actually end up going with. I want to see original models and gameplay. Now that being said, all those things included, I only took a point off of the game. And the main reason is my enjoyment factor of the game. The fact that I've put 120 hours into this game, and I still feel like I could put in another maybe 20-30 hours before I've run dry on anything I could possibly accomplish, is something I didn't expect. So I'm now going to go into the things that I did like about the game that got me to play it 120 hours in the first place. So first of all, Noctis and his crew stories are told and concluded nicely, minus, like I said, the times where they go missing, the things that are clearly covered in DLC. I am looking forward to more backstory though, because while I feel like the story succeeded, the thing I was talking about earlier is more world building. Story is complete, but the world around the story feels incomplete. I'm happy that Noctis got his conclusion in the end, and I'm content with the way that everything played out. The combat, easily one of my favorite combat systems. Combat flows beautifully even after 100 hours. I'm not even close to being bored of the combat. Every time I land a big hit, every time I get a blindside strike, it's always satisfying to me. This is an easy one. The OST, holy cow. Coupled with the classic tracks that are available via the MP3 player and the car, it's easily one of the most stacked OSTs of any Final Fantasy game that's ever been released. And the original tracks to Final Fantasy 15 are just, I'm not even somebody who goes that gaga over in-game music most of the time, but it's just like butter in my ears. And that sounds gross, but it feels so good. Another big positive for me was the magic system. Magic is so powerful. It's almost too powerful because you'll just kill your teammates with it half the time. But if you know what you're doing with magic, you have the right skills to support it with your teammates to protect them, it is incredible what you are able to do to even the super bosses in this game if you know how to collect and craft the right magic spells. This was a big one for me because it surprised me. The dungeon design is stellar, except for the 8 bonus dungeons that exist within the current dungeons, which are all just copy pastas of a handful of room designs. The secret dungeon, which is a jumping puzzle, is designed brilliantly, and even the most frustrating of dungeons in this game are designed with even the smallest details in mind. I love that I remember every single dungeon other than maybe Dorel Caverns. I remember aspects about every single one of them, what frustrated me, what I liked, and that to me defines a classic Final Fantasy dungeon. I feel they hit the nail on the head with that. Minus those super bosses I mentioned before, almost all the other bosses feel epic, especially some of the bosses that are strictly used as set pieces. Leviathan, I'm looking at you. They don't even need to be easy or difficult or whatever. They're just beautiful boss fights. Now the world itself, it's a lot smaller than I anticipated, and that's because they told us how big the world of Eos is actually supposed to be, but it's still pretty big, and it left me constantly discovering new things, new weapons, new locations, dungeons, royal arms, everything. I was glad I was constantly discovering new things. I also want to give a shout out to the English voice acting cast. Now, I'm not somebody who ever listens to the Japanese voiceovers because I like to listen to my games, not read them. That being said, this is one of the more impressive voiceover casts that I've ever seen, or ever heard, I should say, and specifically, Arden and his English voice actor both come together to make a villain I'm never going to forget, and Arden as a villain is another thing that I want to list as a positive. Summons feel epic. I like the feeling of epicness, even though I wish I could use summons more frequently, even at the cost of some of their ridiculous strength. They feel epic, and every time I get one, I'm like, yes, yes! I'm super excited. The minigames are another thing. Minigames aren't overbearing, and they serve meaningful purposes, including the fishing, Justice Monsters 5, the Arena of Alticia, and some of those tour quests, which give you some nice backstory on the characters. Now, I could keep listing some more things that I did like, but I want to give you guys a final verdict, because at this point, I'm just rattling off things I like, things I don't like, and it's not really coming together into my overall scores on each of the individual aspects of the game. So for art and design, easy 9 out of 10. I love the design, especially of the dungeons, and all of the art feels great to look at. The music, 10 out of 10. I mean, it has the advantage of having so many of the best songs of Final Fantasy put into the game that don't even belong to Final Fantasy 15's OST. But if you just listen to Ifrit's theme, Leviathan's theme, the different Somnus themes, the Claim Battle theme, like, there's so many great themes that come out of this game. And as someone who isn't someone who, like, puts different songs from, like, video games on their MP3 player or anything, these are some songs that I would love to listen to on times that are not on Final Fantasy 15. The combat for me is a 9 out of 10. That one point that I'm taking out there is because of the camera. It's part of the combat, and I can't ignore that. So I can't give it a perfect 10 with the camera working the way it does. The story, and mind you, I'm rating the story differently than the world building of all the other characters, is an 8 out of 10 for me. It's not the best story, but I'm content with the way that the story begins, its middle, and its end. However, the world building of all the other characters that aren't the main cast was weak. That's a 5 out of 10 for me. I got enough information to be interested in those characters, and they definitely gave me characters that I want to know more about. That's good. That means they created interesting characters. The problem is, I don't get to see the stories that make me interested in those characters in the first place. So the world building was definitely the weakest point of the game for me. That's easily a 5 out of 10. Now, my overall score of 9 out of 10 is not based on an average of all those scores. It's based on the most important thing in video games. How much fun and enjoyment that I get out of my purchase, and for that, an easy 9 out of 10. The problems with the game never bothered me to the point where I lost interest or understanding in what I was doing and why. By the end of it all, I couldn't think of anything better to do but to keep playing. And the talking about it now is making me want to play it again. So I'm going to have to end this video before I spend another 100 hours in the game. Again, I am also looking forward to all the DLCs, the free and paid DLC for Final Fantasy 15, and I plan to cover all of that on my YouTube channel, which I'm sure comes to the surprise of none of you. Anyway, that's going to be a wrap for my Final Fantasy 15 review. Be sure to put your thoughts in the comment section and be civil. I know a lot of people are agreeing, disagreeing about different aspects of the game. Try to be civil with each other. Civilness in the YouTube comment section. That's funny. I'm making myself laugh. Anyway, be sure to like, favorite, subscribe, and share, and stay tuned for more Final Fantasy 15 videos, news, guides, gameplay on the channel. Be on the lookout. Thank you for watching, and until next time, take care.